And the Supreme Court has now ended its latest session, handing down some major rulings on its final day yesterday. While the court upheld birthright citizenship, it issued several rulings that the Trump administration is actually happy about.
So especially the one that gives the president the greatest increase of power in more than a century. Here to break it all down for us is Supreme Court legal analyst Reagan Charleston Thomas. Good morning, Reagan. Thanks for being with us.
Hi, thank you for having me. Yeah, we saw a lot come out of the court yesterday.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. Can we start with the most recent decision then to block the ban on birthright citizenship?
The ban on birthright citizenship is one that was very closely watched, and I believe that this was a predictable outcome from the Supreme Court. Birthright citizenship is something that our nation has been so proud of, and if you're born on American soil, you are an American citizen, and this has not changed under the court's latest ruling.
I mean, this was something the president really wanted, right? He was the first president to ever sit in oral arguments for a case on birthright citizenship. He wanted this, signing the executive order. So what does the ruling mean for immigrants who are in the United States on a temporary status or those who entered illegally? Does anything change?
That means that if they have children here, their children will be citizens. And yes, you're correct. President Trump did sit in on oral argument. He was not there for the announcing of the decision yesterday. Immediately, he had a response that he would attack this from a legislative angle and constitutional amendment. That is a very difficult road. But here we see that the ruling leaves the status quo in place, and that's children born in the United States, including to undocumented immigrants. And temporary visitors continue to receive birthright citizenship, and that prior order out of the executive has no legal effect.
Okay. Well, can you explain the court's ruling then on transgender athletes and what it means for us folks here in New York and New Jersey?
So this ruling out of the Supreme Court was also a very predictable one, an oral argument. The questions posed by the bench really, left this predictable. We saw the direction it was going in back in January. The ruling out of the court, it upheld the state's ability to enact these laws that would restrict individuals, trans individuals who were not assigned that biological sex at birth from competing in those sports. So, for a practical standpoint, for those in New York and New Jersey and any state, the states are enabled to enforce and pass legislation that does restrict athletes to those by their sex assigned at birth.
Let's talk about the other one, right? The Supreme Court also relaxed the rules on campaign finance limits. This one kind of got a little confusing for some folks at home. So what does it really mean, especially as we head into this contentious midterm election cycle? And what was he hoping for here?
Well, we're going to see immediate impacts from, this ruling that came down. And this case tested whether a Watergate-era provision of the Federal Election Campaign Act, which capped party candidate coordinated spending, could survive under modern First Amendment campaign finance doctrine. So basically here, the candidates were restricted from cooperating and coordinating with the federal election committees and their party committees. And so we had the 2001 Colorado Republican decision, which had previously upheld that coordinated expenditure limits were impermissible. And so in the 6-3 ruling, the court decided that coordinated expenditure limits violated the First Amendment, and it cannot be justified as narrowly tailored to anti-corruption measures. So that decision was invalidated, and the majority concluded that capping coordinated party spending did severely and directly restrict political parties' speech and association. So really, it's going to open essentially the floodgates of campaign finance spending. So we're going to see a lot of money pumped into midterms right now.
Okay. Well, there was one ruling, though, that the president was really happy about, which granted him more presidential power, especially when it comes to independent agencies. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so the president will have greater latitude to work with these agencies, and it was certainly a decision that he was proud to see come down and relieved about. I can understand that on his side, after he was so heavily involved in some of the other decisions, that it wasn't a total loss for President Trump yesterday.
But there is an exemption to the ruling, and that's the Federal Reserve. And so people were saying, well, why does that agency get special treatment in the eyes of the Supreme Court?
Well, I think that when the Supreme Court is looking at our Federal Reserve, the Federal Reserve is traditionally independent of, and that's because it involves money. And that's something that you saw a very traditionally conservative viewpoint out of the Supreme Court, and something that's largely unsurprising. And that's the judiciary stance that the executive should not have brought overreach into our Federal Reserve.
All right, Reagan, thank you so much for laying that all out for us. We appreciate it.
It's a lot.
It is a lot.
It is a lot.
Thank you.